The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the dry field. The air was thick with the smell of earth and grass. A quiet hum filled the air, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of danger, the sound of a giant machine heading toward her. The alien girl, her skin a pale shade of blue, lay helpless in the middle of the field. She was tied up tightly, her arms and legs bound with thick ropes that cut into her skin. Her heart raced, and panic filled her chest as she twisted and turned trying to break free, but it was no use. The ropes were too tight, and her strength, though great compared to humans, was useless in this situation. She was trapped. Her family had abandoned her. She had never felt so alone. Her kind, cold and cruel, had left her to die. They had tied her up like a useless animal and walked away without a second thought. They thought she was weak, that she couldn't survive. But they were wrong. She had always been strong, but now, even that strength couldn't save her. The alien girl's eyes darted from one side of the field to the other. The wind whipped her hair, but she barely noticed. All she could think about was the loud sound of the harvester's blades, getting closer. She could see it now, a giant machine moving slowly toward her, its massive blades spinning, ready to cut down everything in its path. The ground trembled beneath her as the harvester's wheels rolled closer. Terror surged through her. She had never been so close to death before. She tried to scream for help, but no sound came out. Her throat was dry and her body was shaking with fear. The machine was almost on top of her now. She could see the sharp blades gleaming in the light of the setting sun. It was too late. There was nowhere to hide. She was going to die here, all alone, with no one to save her. As the harvester's blades neared her, the girl closed her eyes, bracing for impact. She had given up. There was no point in fighting anymore. But then, just as she thought it was the end, something strange happened. A loud shout broke through the air, followed by the sound of footsteps racing toward her. She opened her eyes, confused, and saw a man running toward her. He was a human, dressed in simple clothes, and his face was filled with determination. His eyes were wide, but there was something else in them, something that made her think just for a second that he was here to help her. Without a second thought, the man reached her. He didn't hesitate. He quickly knelt down beside her, pulling out a sharp knife from his belt. The alien girl couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had expected him to be like the others, ruthless, uncaring. But this man, he was different. With a few quick cuts, the ropes around her wrists and ankles were gone. She could feel the blood rushing back into her limbs, and for the first time since she had been tied up, she could move again. Her hands were free, but she was too weak to stand. The farmer, who had been working in the fields just moments before, didn't waste any time. He pulled her up, helping her stand on shaky legs. The alien girl's head spun as she tried to get her bearings. She looked at the man, unsure of what to say. Her mind was still racing with fear, her body still trembling from the shock of almost dying. But in that moment, she realized something. She was safe, at least for now. The man glanced over his shoulder, his face tense. The harvester was only a few yards away. If they didn't move quickly, it would be too late. Without saying a word, he pulled the girl with him, guiding her away from the danger. She stumbled, her legs weak, but he held her up. His strength gave her a sense of comfort, even if she didn't fully understand what was happening. They ran as fast as they could, the sound of the harvester growing louder in the distance. The man led her to a nearby barn, a small, simple structure that stood against the horizon. Once they were inside, he shut the door behind them, breathing heavily as he leaned against it. The alien girl sank to the ground, her knees giving way. She looked at the man, her chest still heaving. She was safe now, but she had no idea who he was or why he helped her. She didn't even know if he was going to leave her here, or if he had any plans for her at all. But for the first time in what felt like forever, the alien girl felt a tiny spark of hope. She wasn't alone. And somehow that made all the difference. The barn was quiet, but the alien girl couldn't stop shaking. Her heart was still racing from the close call with the harvester, She could still hear the sound of the blades in her mind, the horrible noise that had almost taken her life. Her hands trembled as she wrapped her arms around her knees, trying to calm herself. She looked around the barn, taking in her surroundings. The air smelled of hay and wood, and it felt warmer here than outside in the cold wind. The farmer, who had saved her, was standing near the door. He was watching her carefully, his expression serious but kind. His hands were on his hips, and he looked tired from running, but there was a determination in his eyes. He seemed to be thinking, unsure of what to do next. The alien girl didn't know how to thank him, or even if she could. She didn't speak his language, and she had no idea if he understood hers. But she had to say something. She opened her mouth to speak, but only a few strange words came out. The farmer raised an eyebrow and took a step closer. He didn't seem scared of her, even though she was so different from him. Her skin was blue, her eyes large and dark, and her ears were slightly pointed. She had never seen a human up close before, but he seemed normal. His clothes were simple, dusty from working on the farm, but he had a kind face, one that didn't look like someone who would leave her to die. The girl tried again, but her voice was shaky. She didn't know if he could understand her words. She gestured toward the door, then to herself, trying to explain what had happened. She didn't know why she was abandoned, or why her family had left her. But there was something in her eyes that spoke louder than words. She was scared, and she was grateful. The farmer could see that. He took a deep breath, then knelt down in front of her. He looked into her eyes, his face softening. "It's okay," he said, his voice low but calm. "You're safe here." The alien girl blinked. She didn't know what he meant by safe, but the way he spoke made her feel like maybe, just maybe, things would be okay. She wasn't alone anymore. She had no idea who this man was or why he helped her, but something about him made her believe he wouldn't hurt her. The farmer stood up and walked to a nearby table. He picked up a bucket and motioned for the girl to follow him. She was still hesitant, unsure of what he wanted from her, but she did as he asked, slowly standing up and following him. He stopped by a small wooden trough, filled it with water, and handed her a cup. She stared at it for a moment before looking back at him. He smiled gently and nodded, showing her that it was safe to drink. The girl took the cup, unsure of what to do. She didn't know if the water would be safe for her, but she was so thirsty. She took a small sip, and then another, slowly feeling the water cool her dry throat. It felt good, better than anything she had had in a long time. She looked up at the farmer again, and this time her eyes spoke of thanks. He watched her carefully, as if studying her. "You must be hungry too," he said softly. "I'll make you something to eat." The alien girl wasn't sure what he meant by eat, but her stomach growled in response, reminding her that she hadn't had food in a long time. She watched as the farmer moved around the barn, collecting some simple ingredients. He worked quickly, and soon he had a small fire going in the corner. The girl's eyes widened as she saw him cook something over the flames. She had never seen cooking like this before. The smell of the food was strange but inviting. She could feel her stomach tighten with hunger. The farmer set the food down on a small table and motioned for the girl to come closer. She hesitated, at first, but then she sat down beside him. She watched as he carefully cut the food into small pieces and placed it in front of her. She reached for it, unsure of how to eat it, but the farmer showed her how. He picked up a piece with his hands and ate it, nodding at her to follow his example. The alien girl picked up a piece of food, still unsure, and took a bite. It was different from anything she had ever eaten, but it was warm, and it filled the emptiness inside her. It didn't take long before she was eating faster, her hunger taking over. She looked at the farmer, who was watching her with interest but didn't say anything. He simply let her eat in peace. When she finished, she looked at him, feeling strange. She had never felt this kind of warmth before. Her family had always been cold, distant, but this man, he had saved her life. He had given her food and water when she had nothing. She didn't know why, but she knew she owed him everything. The farmer stood up and walked to the door, his hand resting on the wooden frame. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," he said quietly. "I'll keep you safe here, away from the danger." The girl didn't know how to respond. She was safe, for now. But there was still so much she didn't understand. Why had he helped her? What would happen next? She didn't have the answers, but for the first time in a long time she felt like there was hope. Days passed, and the alien girl started to adjust to life in the barn. The farmer, whose name she had learned was John, was kind and patient with her. Every day he would make sure she had enough food, water, and a place to rest. He never asked her where she came from or what had happened to her. He simply let her be, offering help whenever she needed it. At first she stayed in the barn, keeping to herself. She wasn't sure if it was safe to go outside, but John never pressured her. He'd go out to work in the fields, leaving her inside, but he always came back with a smile. The alien girl couldn't understand why he was so kind to her. She had never known kindness before. One day, while John was out working, she decided to go outside. The sun was high in the sky and the air was warm. She had been curious about the world beyond the barn since she had arrived. Slowly, she stepped out, her bare feet touching the soft grass. She had never felt the earth like this before, and it made her feel strange, almost alive in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. The field stretched out before her, green and peaceful. She walked cautiously, her eyes scanning the area. The world here seemed so different from the one she knew. It was peaceful, but it was also full of things she didn't understand. The plants, the animals, the way the wind moved, everything felt new. As she wandered further from the barn, she heard a sound behind her. She turned quickly, her heart racing. But it was just John, walking back toward her with a basket of tools. He smiled when he saw her. "You're out here," he said, his voice gentle. "How do you like the field?" The alien girl didn't answer right away. She was still unsure of how to communicate with him, but she nodded slightly, pointing at the plants around her. John raised an eyebrow, wondering if she wanted to learn more about the plants. He set the basket down and crouched beside her, showing her a small flower that grew nearby. "This is a dandelion," he explained, his voice soft. "People use the leaves in salads, and the flowers are good for making tea." He pointed to a patch of green plants growing nearby. "That's spinach, you can eat the leaves." The alien girl watched him carefully, her eyes focused on his every move. She had never seen such plants before, and the idea of eating something from the earth fascinated her. She didn't speak, but she could feel the curiosity bubbling inside her. She stepped closer to the plants, touching a leaf carefully, feeling the softness between her fingers. John smiled as he watched her. "If you want, I can teach you more about the plants and animals here. You'll have to learn how to take care of yourself." He paused, his expression serious. "And I'll teach you how to speak if you want. I know you're not from around here, but I think we can make it work." The alien girl looked at him, her heart racing. She had never expected this, never expected someone to want to teach her. She had always been on her own, abandoned by her family, but now this man was offering her a chance. She nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. She wasn't sure if she could ever fully understand this world, but she was willing to try. For the first time since she had arrived, she felt like there might be a future for her here. Over the next few weeks, John kept his promise. Every day he would show her something new. He taught her how to plant seeds, how to care for the animals on the farm, and how to recognize the different plants that grew in the fields. Slowly, the alien girl began to feel more comfortable. She learned to speak a few words in John's language, though it was difficult at first. But John was patient, repeating words and showing her what they meant. One afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, John turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said slowly, "I don't know much about where you came from, but I'm glad you're here. I've been working alone for a long time, and having someone to talk to, it's good." The alien girl looked at him, her heart swelling with something she couldn't quite name. She had never had someone care for her, not like this. She didn't know how to repay him for his kindness. But she knew one thing: she didn't want to leave. John smiled at her, his eyes warm. "I think you're going to be just fine here." For the first time in a long time, the alien girl felt something she hadn't thought was possible. She felt at home. The weeks turned into months, and the alien girl's life with John became more comfortable. She had learned many new things: how to plant seeds in the soil, how to care for the animals on the farm, and how to prepare simple meals. John continued to teach her, never rushing, always patient. Though they didn't always understand each other's words, they communicated through gestures, smiles, and the shared work they did together. The alien girl felt a deep sense of belonging she had never known before. It was as though she had finally found a place where she was accepted, where she was no longer alone. But there was still a part of her that wondered what had happened to her family. Why had they left her? Why hadn't they come back to find her? These questions haunted her at night when the barn was quiet, and she lay awake staring at the ceiling. One evening, as the sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, John sat on the porch of the barn, watching the stars begin to appear. The alien girl joined him, her feet bare against the cool earth. She sat beside him, her eyes gazing up at the sky. She had never seen stars like these before. The night sky on her home planet had been different, darker, with fewer stars. She found herself drawn to the twinkling lights above, wondering what they meant. John noticed the sadness in her eyes and quietly spoke. "Do you miss your family?" he asked, his voice gentle. The alien girl didn't respond at first. She didn't know how to explain it. Her family had been distant, cold. They had never shown her the care John had. But even so, they were the only family she had ever known. She nodded slowly, unsure if John would understand. "I'm sorry," John said, his voice soft with sympathy. "I can't imagine what it must be like to lose everything like that. But you're not alone anymore. You've got me now." The alien girl looked at him, her dark eyes filled with emotion. She didn't know how to express her gratitude. She had never felt this kind of kindness before. She wanted to say thank you, but the words still didn't come easily. Instead, she gave him a small smile. A smile that spoke of all the things she couldn't say. The next day, John took her to the edge of the farm, near a small river that ran through the land. The trees were thick and green, and the air smelled fresh. John pointed to the water and said, "This is the place I go when I need to think. It's peaceful here. Maybe it'll help you too." The alien girl looked at the river, the water flowing smoothly over the rocks. It was calm and still, just like the feeling that washed over her. She had never known peace like this. She sat by the riverbank, dipping her fingers into the cool water. The sound of the flowing river was soothing, and for a moment she felt like she could forget the pain of her past, the loneliness and the fear. As the days went on, the bond between the alien girl and John grew stronger. They spent more time together, sharing stories through gestures and simple words. John would talk to her about his life, about the farm, about the animals, and the changes he had seen over the years. The alien girl listened carefully, trying to understand as much as she could. She never spoke much, but she was learning. One day, as they were working together in the garden, the alien girl saw something that caught her eye. A small bird, colorful and bright, flew overhead. She followed it with her eyes, fascinated by its beauty. John noticed her interest and smiled. "That's a robin," he said. "It's a sign of spring. They come back every year. It's a reminder that things can start over." The alien girl turned to him, her eyes wide with curiosity. She had never heard of such a thing. A bird that came back every year? It sounded strange, but there was something comforting about it. Maybe there was hope, just like the robin that always returned. Maybe, just maybe, she could find her own new beginning here. As the seasons changed, the farm became more than just a place to live. It became home. The alien girl learned to help with the harvest, bringing in the crops that John had planted. She learned how to care for the animals, how to fix things that broke, and how to cook meals from the food they grew. Every day she grew stronger, not just in body but in spirit. And as the days passed, the alien girl began to feel something she had never felt before: hope. She didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in her life, she believed it could be good. She had a family now, in a way. She had John, the farmer who had saved her life and shown her kindness when she needed it most. One evening, as they worked side by side in the garden, the alien girl looked up at John, a soft smile on her face. For the first time, she felt like she was truly home. John looked at her, his eyes filled with warmth and understanding. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And you're not alone. You're part of this farm, part of this world, and you always will be." The alien girl nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle in her heart. She had found a new family, a new home, and a new hope. And for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of what the future held. The seasons continued to change, bringing new challenges and new joys. John's farm was growing, and the alien girl was learning more every day. She had become an essential part of his life, helping him with the animals and crops, and the two of them worked well together. The alien girl was stronger now, more confident. She had even begun to speak more words in John's language, though her accent was still heavy, and her sentences were simple. One day, while they were working in the garden, John stopped and looked at her with a thoughtful expression. "You've come a long way," he said, wiping the sweat from his brow. "When you first arrived, you didn't say much, but now you're more like family." The alien girl stopped what she was doing and looked at him. Family. She had never known what that word truly meant until now. She nodded slowly, her eyes shining with emotion. The words she wanted to say were still difficult for her, but she felt it deep inside. John had shown her what it meant to care, to work together, and to have someone to rely on. But despite the peace she had found, there was still a part of her that felt uneasy. She often thought about her family, the ones who had left her behind. What had happened to them? Were they still out there? Had they forgotten her? Every time she allowed herself to think about them, her heart would ache with confusion and loss. One evening, as the sky turned a soft shade of purple, John took a break from his work and sat beside the alien girl on the porch. They watched the stars appear one by one in the sky just as they had done many times before. "I know you miss them," John said softly, "but I want you to know that you have a place here. You've made this farm your home. You've earned your place here, just like I've earned mine." The alien girl looked at him, her heart full of gratitude. She had never known such kindness, such understanding. John's words were like a warm blanket, wrapping her up in comfort. She nodded, though she didn't say anything. Words were still hard for her to find, but she felt the truth of what he said. The next day, a strange noise broke the calm of the farm. It came from the woods near the edge of the property, a low rumble that seemed to shake the ground. John immediately stood up, his expression tense. "Stay here," he told the alien girl, his voice serious. "I'm going to check it out." The alien girl watched him go, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't like the way he had looked when he said that. It was as though something was wrong. Something dangerous was approaching. She had learned to trust John, but her instincts told her that something wasn't right. She waited for what felt like hours, the noise from the woods continuing to grow louder. She couldn't stay inside any longer. Her curiosity and fear got the best of her. She decided to follow him. Carefully, she made her way toward the woods, moving quietly through the trees. She had learned how to move silently, to blend into the surroundings. It wasn't long before she saw John standing near the edge of the woods looking at something. The alien girl crept closer, trying to stay hidden. She peered through the bushes and saw what John was staring at. A large metallic vehicle sat at the edge of the forest, its surface gleaming in the fading light. It wasn't anything John had ever seen before. The design was strange, unlike anything from this world. There were markings on the side that the alien girl couldn't understand, but she could tell from the way John's face changed that it wasn't a friendly sight. John stepped forward cautiously, his hand reaching for the weapon he always kept on him. The alien girl's heart raced. She knew he was about to face something dangerous, Without thinking, she rushed out of her hiding place and stood in front of him. "John, no," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "Please don't go near it." John looked at her in surprise, his eyes wide. He had never heard her speak so clearly before. Her voice was filled with fear, but there was also a sense of urgency. He hesitated, looking at the strange vehicle, and then back at her. "What is it?" he asked quietly, his hand still gripping the weapon. The alien girl stepped closer, her eyes focused on the vehicle. She didn't know what it was, but she had a feeling that it wasn't something good. She had seen enough of her own world to know that some things were better left alone. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I think we need to leave." John stood still for a moment, weighing his options. The alien girl had never spoken like this before. She was usually so calm and quiet. Something about her presence made him pause. Slowly, he lowered the weapon. "All right," he said softly. "We'll leave." Together they turned and walked away from the strange vehicle, heading back toward the safety of the farm. The noise from the woods faded behind them, but the uneasy feeling stayed with the alien girl. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew one thing for sure. Things were about to change. The next few days felt tense on the farm. John and the alien girl kept their distance from the woods, and the strange vehicle had not appeared again. But the feeling of danger still hung in the air. John couldn't shake the image of the shiny, metallic machine, and the alien girl couldn't ignore the sense of foreboding that had settled in her heart. They tried to go back to their daily routine, but it was clear that something had changed. John worked the fields, but his mind was elsewhere. The alien girl helped him, just as she always did, but every now and then, she would look toward the woods, her gaze sharp and cautious. One morning, as the sun rose over the horizon, the alien girl stood on the porch of the barn watching the sky. She could feel the change in the air like a storm was coming. Her instincts told her something was wrong. She had never been more certain of anything in her life. John came out of the barn, stretching his arms and yawning. When he saw her standing there, he paused. "You feel it too, don't you?" he asked quietly. The alien girl nodded, her eyes still fixed on the horizon. She could sense something, a presence that hadn't been there before. It was like an invisible weight in the air, pressing down on her chest. "I've been thinking about it," John said, his voice low. "That vehicle we saw. It's not just a random thing, it has to be part of something bigger. Someone is looking for you." The alien girl looked at him, her heart racing. She hadn't wanted to admit it, but John was right. Someone was searching. For her. She didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but she knew they wouldn't stop until they found her. "I don't want you to get hurt," John said, his eyes soft but serious. "You've become like family to me. I won't let anyone hurt you." The alien girl reached out and touched his arm gently. She didn't have the words to explain how much his kindness meant to her. All she could do was offer him a quiet smile, a smile that spoke of gratitude and trust. She was learning that she didn't have to fight alone anymore. That afternoon, as they worked in the fields, a loud noise echoed through the air. It was unmistakable, the sound of engines. The alien girl froze, her heart thudding in her chest. John's expression darkened as he looked up at the sky. The sound grew louder, closer. "We need to get inside now," he said urgently, grabbing her arm. They ran toward the barn, the alien girl's feet barely touching the ground. She had no idea what was coming, but her body knew what to do. She had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, they were screaming at her to move. They reached the barn just as the first shadow appeared in the sky. The alien girl looked up and saw a fleet of vehicles, similar to the one they had seen before, flying toward them. The air was filled with the sound of engines roaring, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. John quickly locked the barn door behind them, breathing heavily. He looked at the alien girl, his face pale. "They've found us," he whispered. The alien girl stood still, trying to control her fear. She could see the fear in John's eyes, but she couldn't let it show on her face. She had to be strong, for both of them. "What do we do?" John asked, his voice shaking. They're not going to leave us alone, the alien girl thought quickly. She had learned a lot during her time on Earth, but there was still so much she didn't understand. She had no idea how to fight or defend herself in this new world, but she had learned one important thing from John. They could rely on each other. We leave, she said, her voice steady. We run. John looked at her in surprise. Run? Where? The alien girl didn't have an answer. She didn't know where they could go, but she did know one thing. Staying in the barn was not an option. If they didn't leave now, they would be trapped. We go to the river, she said, pointing toward the distant water. It's the safest place. John didn't hesitate. He grabbed a few supplies, a small bag with food, a flashlight and a knife, and handed one to the alien girl. Together they ran out of the barn and into the woods heading toward the river. The sound of the vehicles grew louder, and the alien girl's heart raced. They were close now. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew they couldn't stop. Not now. The woods were dense, the trees thick with leaves that rustled in the wind. The alien girl led the way, her instincts guiding her. John followed closely behind, his breath heavy. They ran faster, the sound of the vehicles now almost deafening. Just as they reached the river, the alien girl heard something that made her blood run cold. The sound of footsteps behind them. Someone was following them. She turned to look at John, her face filled with determination. We can't stop now. Keep going. John nodded, his face grim. They waded into the river, the cold water rushing around their legs. The alien girl knew they couldn't stay in the water for long. It was only a matter of time before their pursuers caught up with them. They had to keep moving. As they disappeared into the night, the sound of engines echoed in the distance, a constant reminder that their enemies were getting closer. But for now, the alien girl and John had each other, and that was enough. The night was dark, and the river's cold water rushed past them as they waded deeper. The alien girl led the way, her sharp eyes scanning the area ahead, always alert. John followed closely behind, his footsteps heavy in the water. They had been running for what felt like hours, but the sounds of the vehicles chasing them never faded. The noise echoed off the trees and made the air feel thick with danger. We can't stop now, the alien girl said quietly, glancing over her shoulder. They're still after us. John nodded, but he was breathing hard, his chest heaving. How much further? Not far, she replied, her voice steady, though her mind raced with thoughts of what they would do when they reached the other side of the river. The water wasn't deep, but it was cold, and crossing it would slow them down. Still, it was better than being trapped on the land. They made their way to the far side of the river, where the trees grew thicker. As they climbed the muddy bank, the alien girl paused for a moment, listening. The sound of the vehicles had stopped, but something in the air told her they weren't out of danger yet. John stopped beside her, trying to catch his breath. He glanced at the alien girl, concern written across his face. What's wrong? Why did we stop? The alien girl didn't answer right away. Her senses were tingling, warning her that something was close. She slowly crouched down, signaling for John to do the same. They crouched behind a large rock, the alien girl's eyes scanning the area in front of them. The sounds of footsteps reached their ears. At first it was faint, but soon it grew louder. The alien girl's heart skipped, a beat as she recognized the sound. It wasn't just the vehicles. They had sent people after them. John tensed beside her, his hand reaching for the knife he had kept with him. The alien girl grabbed his wrist, her grip tight. No, she whispered. We can't fight them. Not like this. John's eyes flickered with worry, but he nodded. Then what do we do? The alien girl's mind raced. She knew they had to keep moving, but they couldn't risk getting caught. They needed a plan. As she thought, she noticed something. A small abandoned shack stood just a few hundred yards away, hidden among the trees. It was barely visible through the thick brush, but it was their only chance. She pointed toward the shack. We go there. It's our best chance. John followed her gaze and nodded. Without wasting another second, they got to their feet and began moving toward the shack. careful to stay hidden in the shadows. The alien girl's heart was pounding in her chest. She had no idea what would happen once they reached the shack, but she knew it was better than staying out in the open. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The alien girl could feel the weight of the danger closing in on them. But they kept moving, staying low and quiet. She kept her senses sharp, her eyes darting around to check for any sign of the enemy. They finally reached the shack, and the alien girl quickly pushed open the old, creaky door. It swung open with a groan, and they both slipped inside, shutting the door softly behind them. Inside it was dark and musty. The air smelled of old wood and dust. There was barely enough room for them to stand, but it would do. They pressed themselves against the wall, trying to make themselves as small as possible. John whispered, "Do you think they saw us?" The alien girl shook her head, her breath shallow. "I don't know. But we can't stay here for long. We need to move again as soon as it's safe." They stayed quiet, listening to the sounds outside. The footsteps had stopped, but the alien girl didn't trust the silence. She knew it was only a matter of time before their pursuers figured out where they were. John sat down against the wall, his face pale and tired. He looked at the alien girl, his expression soft. "Thank you for leading me out of there. I don't know what I would have done without you." The alien girl looked at him, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had grown to care for John deeply. He had shown her more kindness than anyone ever had. But there was still a part of her that worried about what would happen next. She didn't want to lose him. She couldn't. "We'll be okay," she said softly, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. They sat in silence for what felt like hours, the night stretching on. The sounds outside remained still, but the alien girl's mind refused to rest. Her instincts told her that danger was still close. Just as she was about to speak, a loud crash echoed through the forest, followed by the sound of someone shouting. It was coming from the direction of the river. Their pursuers were still searching for them. "We need to go," the alien girl said urgently, grabbing John's arm. "Now!" John nodded quickly, standing up. Together, they slipped out of the shack and into the dark woods. The alien girl led the way, her heart racing. She knew they couldn't stay ahead of their enemies forever, but she refused to give up. They would fight until the very end if they had to. As they ran through the forest, the alien girl couldn't help but think that their journey was far from over. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with danger and fear. But as long as they had each other, they still had hope.